We've got a special edition to close out the year with some Vibe rankings of publicly listed Bitcoin mining and AI companies.
Cango, tough one. They destroyed investor trust earlier this year when they sold a lot of founder shares and the stock price cratered, and it's going to be hard for that to come back.
If I'm looking at Mara, they have one of the highest hash costs and one of the highest executive comps in the industry.
American Bitcoin has been an interesting story. They announced a launch. They also did a pipe deal. Pipe deals exist for a reason, but if there are not proper disclosures and investors are not aware, you risk quite literally murdering your stock price.
Guys, there is a serious problem right now in Bitcoin mining, and we need to talk about it. You need to pay attention to this. Bitcoin miners are identifying as AI companies, and people keep missectoring them because they say, well look, your infrastructure is clearly for Bitcoin mining. What do you want me to do about it? I'm going to tell you what you need to do. You need to call FBox, the leading digital infrastructure company with all-encompassing cooling solutions. FBox designs industry-leading air, hydro, and immersion cooling systems for Bitcoin mining and AI and HPC data centers. I want to highlight that. If you're a Bitcoin miner who needs to bridge the gap, if you're pivoting or doing hybrid operations, they can build cooling solutions and infrastructure for both your Bitcoin mining and your AI and HPC operations. And they have an in-house API that lets you monitor it from the web or on mobile. So go to www.fbox.tech/contact to learn how FBox can help you optimize your digital infrastructure today. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Mining Pod. We've got the core Blockspace team on today for our usual news roundup, but we're going to be touching on mining metrics here in a second, but we've got a special edition to close out the year with some Vibe rankings of publicly listed Bitcoin mining and AI companies. Bitcoin miners expanding into AI. We don't really have a good name for it. Bitcoin
AI factories.
AI. I don't understand. I don't like that term. They don't produce anything.
But it's happening. People are.
I know.
They're saying it. It's not just us.
As I've argued, language is bottom up. It's an emergent phenomenon. So I'm not going to fight the current. I'll lean into it if it's good for SEO. But we're going to get to some Vibe rankings here in a second. But first, we've got to do our usual hash rate index update from our friends at Luxor. And kind of maybe some interesting things to talk about today. We'll tie in one of the stories that we published here in a second with some analysis by Van Eck. But so far, it's looking like we're going to get a negative difficulty adjustment coming up here in a couple of days or a few days. And this will be the first time, if it hits and it is negative, that we've had 4 negative adjustments in a row since the China mining ban in 2021. So in the summer following the China mining ban, or rather the summer that saw the China mining ban, hash rate came offline at a rapid clip, and we saw 4 negative adjustments in a row, one of which was the largest in Bitcoin's history, I believe, upwards of like 20-something%. But that should give some relief to miners. Obviously, hash price is woefully low right now at $37.46 per petahash per day. Bitcoin floating around at $88,000. And hash rate, as indicated by the negative difficulty adjustment that we're projecting, is down over the last week, and it has really kind of just been stagnant for the last 3 months. Yeah, I mean, we've really been trading in this band between about 1,000 exahashes and about 1,200 exahashes. And so as Blockspace readers and Mining Pod listeners will know, Chinese officials in Xinjiang cracked down on Bitcoin mining in that coal-rich region last week, or a couple weeks ago at this point. And it's unclear how sticky that's going to be. It looks like it was rolling inspections. Apparently, regulators were tipped off by some Chinese miners who were on TikTok and Rednote advertising their hosting services. Probably not the best move. And some equipment was seized, according to Luxor's Lauren Lin. She made a LinkedIn post about it. Some was left unmolested. It's unclear if this is going to be just a little routine sweep, or if they're actually starting to push mining out of the region. And if they do, that hash rate's going to have not going to have much wiggle room for anywhere else to go, considering hash price is so depressed. But I want to bring in just a quick note from the Van Eck team that we covered today to kind of round this out, and then I'll kick it to y'all. So they touched on VanEck's Matt Siegel and another senior investment analyst, Patrick Bush, touched on the Xinjiang crackdown, saying that it could be related to the fact that China wants to use that region for AI factories and AI data centers. Seems reasonable considering that the region is flush with coal firepower. That's where the majority of China's coal mines are. But the other thing they pointed in this, and we're just going to give you a little dose of hopium and then we can dissect this, is that they highlighted that the 30-day moving average for Bitcoin's hash rate fell 4% from a peak in early November. And they continue to say that when hash rate dips over a 90-day period, usually this is succeeded by Bitcoin price gains, an average gain of 72% every time this has happened. Now, when I first read this, I thought, okay, the hash rate follows price, not the other way around. And you can't necessarily divine what traders are going to do based on Bitcoin's price. But I think the point that Patrick and Matt are making here is that Bitcoin is taking obviously a huge hit. And since mining economics are so low on account of that, and hash rate is coming offline, that shows stress on the network and could indicate that since Bitcoin's price is so low, we're due for a pop. Obviously, history is no indication of future results, but I thought it was an interesting note. And for anyone looking for a reason to be bullish, you have it right there for what it's worth. But kick it over to y'all for second takes.
Yeah, I'll snag it. I wish we got the citation for that reporting, but oh well. Maybe next time in VanEck we'll get the citation. I
was wondering about that. I think they have an internal mandate against backlinks because it doesn't have backlinks to anything.
Yeah, I was just looking at it. Wu blockchain was the first to put out sort of like a report. I think we were the first to actually get a verified news article out. That was not just like linking to another Twitter post. But regardless of all that, the other thing that needs to be pointed out with that decrease in hash rate at the moment was not only the China ban 2.0, as we dubbed it, but also the large amount of curtailment that happened across the US at that time. We had miners in Tennessee contact us saying they're curtailing. You could see it on the Texas grid that prices were hitting high enough margins or high enough points where Bitcoin miners were naturally going to turn off. So when we do get like November, December updates from miners, I'm expecting to see curtailment notices for a host of the different companies. And you can see that on the individual pool level as well. Foundry and Luxor both heavily drop the amount of hash rate reported during those periods if you look at certain APIs. So that has to be taken into consideration for it. That being said, the 30-day trailing average is what matters a little bit more here. In terms of like the hash price and Bitcoin price, there is obviously hash price and hash rate is going to follow price. It's just how it has to work. And for normies, they can never quite figure that out, but it's just the way these things follow. That being said, you can have a history of repeated patterns. And I think that's just kind of what they're noticing here. So it's not indicative that this is going to occur, but it's something that has happened in the past and has typically led to a resurgence later. Much like you'll get analysts talking about like death crosses and golden crosses and things like that in trading. And it's like a useful metric to kind of think of it as like a heuristic. Charlie?
Yeah, a merciful downward difficulty adjustment. Again, psych up for a bunch of takes connecting data that we long have said is not, it's correlative and not causative. So, yeah. I want to get to vibe rankings.
Vibe rank time?
Vibe rank time.
We are going to throw up our vibe rankings for the end of the year. Sadly, and this is my own fault, I dropped the ball. We were supposed to do this every quarter, and it didn't happen. I think partly when I did the initial vibe rankings, there was like a lot of interest. I also got a lot of pushback. Like a lot of people were unhappy with this, but we are going to be persistent and do an end of year vibe ranking. Few disclaimers before we do this vibe ranking. We're going to be looking at publicly listed Bitcoin mining companies / AI factories, as I'm calling them. Essentially companies that have been in the Bitcoin mining game and or now pivoting to AI. We are also only focusing on companies that are public over a certain threshold for how we at Blockspace cover equity. So there are a few companies that we are purposely not considering within our Vibe ranking because, well, a lot of reasons. Maybe they don't have enough hash rate online. They don't have enough megawatts under capacity. They still don't have the market cap to be able to be considered here. So with all of that aside, two stocks that we are also not going to cover is CleanSpark and Galaxy because we have active marketing contracts with them, and that would not seem fair to cover them. So you can do your own rankings and decide where you want to put CleanSpark or Galaxy. We obviously have our opinions, but you're not going to see them today. We are going to do the rest of these stocks, which includes Canaan, Cipher, HUD, American Bitcoin, BitFUFU, Mara, Hut 8, Cango, Bitfarms, Core Scientific, Bitdeer, IREN, RIOT, Terawulf. Probably a few more in here, but that looks like my list. One more thing, Charlie. In terms of disclosures, I actively hold CleanSpark, Galaxy, Core Scientific, Cipher, and Bitfarms in various amounts. Not going to disclose how much. And I'm not holding those versus others for, sometimes they're particular reasons, sometimes they're not. And I've held some of these positions for a long time. So disclosures from you, Colin?
Yeah, I hold a very small bag in Cipher.
I have some Cipher, Bitdeer, and CleanSpark.
Excellent. Okay, Charlie, you also have your hand up.
If you like, and this tier list is available for other people. It's open link. We'll cross post the link down. If you like this, you should post your own Vibe rankings and tag us.
Yes. So we will be giving this link out. You can go into the show notes, make your own Vibe ranking, and then create it, post it on Twitter or LinkedIn, and tag Blockspace or tag one of us on the show, and we will retweet you and engage with you because we want to know your Vibe rankings. So I'm going to kick it off. In terms of the rules of the road, we're going to go through all of these companies. I'm going to give the Vibe ranking for it, and then we'll get some comments from the Peanut crowd on how they view my ranking. We'll also have some commentary on how these companies have done over the course of the year. So there'll be that as well. So
that's the pecan gallery to you.
Yeah, I mean, the peanut gallery, we'll probably move fast on some because I don't think there's going to be too much disagreement. And then on others, there's going to be probably a lot of disagreement. So let us kick it off. And I'm going to start off with just the one that's first on the front of the slide. If you're watching on video, you'll see that. So there's no specific ordering here. Canaan. Canaan is most well known for having 3 separate business lines. Not only does it have a Bitcoin manufacturing arm with its Avalon series units, but it also mines Bitcoin itself and works parts and services among other aspects. They also have like a really cool home heating element that I'd almost consider its own revenue line at this point. It's been so successful. So go check that out. Canaan, I am putting in the B tier. Why am I putting in the B tier? I think Canaan has a unique position going to next year in the fact that they can be vertically integrated versus other miners, which gives them a leg up. However, the leg down is they're still a Bitcoin miner. And I think that's really what influences my decisions versus the last Vibe rankings mid-year. Mid-year, we're still focusing on mining companies. A lot of these deals had not happened. And I was okay with putting a pure play Bitcoin miner a little bit higher. But I think the more pure play you are, or the less ability you have to move into different areas of energy and compute, then that's going to downrank you in this one. And so I'm actually moving Canaan a little bit higher than I think some of the other pure play miners would be because they have this vertically integrated model. Any thoughts on that one? You guys seem pretty nonplussed about it. Seems pretty good.
Oh, no, if we're nonplussed, then we're upset about it.
Oh, you feel plussed about it.
I am very plussed about it. Yeah, so I would agree with this. And I have a article from Blockspace that I won't throw up on the screen, so I don't want to disrupt the Vibe ranking. But, in Q3 2025, revenue increased 114% from the year prior. And, we've been hearing from a number of operators in the space that they're very happy with the new generation of Avalon machines. Quality has increased. They're getting more competitive with efficiency and performance. And that, to me, is probably number one reason why they deserve the B slot. To your point, not quite going to get up higher than that because they are still exposed to Bitcoin mining right now. That is a little tenuous, but also it opens up opportunities if you have fewer people operating in the space. Potentially their hash rate will be worth more over the long run in terms of its production. And also, given the fact that their ASIC manufacturing line is starting to perk up and miners are starting to take interest in it a little bit more, I think B is a fine merit for Canaan.
I originally had Canaan as C because I was a little disappointed in their stock performance. I did own it at some point, and it did not seem to be performing as well. And outside of the industry, nobody knows how to pronounce their name correctly. So that was kind of a dock on the vibe. However, I think B makes sense because Will brought up the heat bit, or their heating, their home miner and heating oriented miner, which has very strong vibes. And I had not considered that. That is a very popular consumer device and is differentiated from the open source one, from the BitAxe movement. So I really like this. It's one of like the very good pleb vibe ranking. So B tier it is. I agree. It's also good to anchor everybody relative to Canaan.
Yeah. And sorry, no one in the industry knows how to pronounce it either.
Yeah.
Like, read the Bible, y'all. Canaan, land of milk and honey. I mean, it's there. Go read the Old Testament.
Listen to the Bible on audiobook, because otherwise you don't know how to pronounce it either.
Okay, on to the next one. Let's keep moving. And Cipher mining, as of this morning, this is going to be the hardest to do because last time in my S tier ranking, I only had one company, Bitdeer. You guys might not be shocked to know that they're not going to be in the S tier this time around. We'll get to them later. They're pretty far over on the screen. However, there are so many companies that I could put in S tier or I could put it in A tier, and I'm not quite sure how to think about it. I think there's a good argument for either, and maybe you're splitting hairs at a certain point, S tier versus A tier. So with that disclosure, I will put them mostly based on the vibes this morning into S tier. This morning, they just announced that they procured 200 megawatts for further AI factory development in the PJM market. I think them moving out of just ERCOT is a nice diversification move for their underlying business. They also have multiple sites going up in ERCOT, including a recent 1 gigawatt campus announcement that they'll be working on the next few years. Honestly, I think when in terms of an AI factory, I really think of Cipher and then Terawulf. In a second, we'll get to them as well. They are procuring land at low-cost sites, building them to specifications for hyperscalers and intermediaries like Anthropic or FluidStack. And that really puts you in a nice place where not only are you getting that multiple as an AI stock and an AI infrastructure stock, and you're able to use Bitcoin mining to juice the revenue in order to build out those campuses, but you're de-risking by not purchasing or ordering GPUs, right? There's less risk on your balance sheet. You're not having to go out and purchase these Blackwells at perhaps a markup. So if you like the AI infrastructure play, I like Cipher mining, throw them in the S tier. I think they also have a really friendly team, very focused, diligent. So S tier for Cipher mining. Any disagreement?
I
put them in A.
A. Why A tier?
I was worried that you both were going to rank them A because I would put them as probably the only S tier company. And again, I'm looking at purely vibes. We have had some fantastic interviews with Tyler Page, their CEO, and people love it. People love to see the clips of him. Every time I interact with anyone from the C-suite of Cipher, I get extremely good vibes. So
and the vibes are important for the vibe ranking.
Yeah, extremely. Yeah.
Being a little more quantitative and qualitative outside of the vibes, the reason why I have them at A is because I don't think that any of my A tier choices have distinguished themselves amongst their peers. That being said, for all of the A tiers that I have, they all have really good AI contracts with blue chip hyperscalers. None of them have done anything that indicates to me that they are leading the pack within that specific cohort of Bitcoin miners. So like it would, for me, it would, you need to have, some sort of completion of your sites or some sort of crazy contract that's just by far and away better than what we've seen. And so for my A tiers, and I'll just list them out right now because we'll get to them: Cipher, IREN, Terawulf, and Hut. They all have really strong pipelines for these deals. They have great contracts. You know, Cipher has the Amazon JV. They got a fluid stack deal with the extension. They also purchased this 200 megawatt site, but none of them have distinguished themselves as being necessarily above the rest. And so for me, I don't think any of them are an S tier yet. They might be next year, but for right now, I think A is where I would put them.
The proof is in the pudding. As we will get to Marathon in a little bit, that's one of the notes that Fred Thiel said on our show with him in November, that a lot of these contracts are pretty aggressive. And I would say Cipher Mining has some of the most aggressive contracts in terms of timelines. They have to have a lot of these sites up and running by August. So yes, that is there, Colin, and we will see. But for right now, we're vibe ranking them. And
we have 2 or 3 at S. Yeah, so
they hit at a good time. They had 200 megawatt announcement this morning. The day we're doing this, I'm sure Tyler knew.
Really high right now.
He knew that we were doing the vibe rankings this morning and put out that press release. That's
got wind. They got wind. They're all in the insider chats. They knew we were going to record the vibe rankings, so they altered their entire, public company.
Okay, Hive. So I have Hive as a C tier ranking, which I think might ruffle some feathers out there. Really like the Hive team. I think Frank and IREN are some of the most eloquent, well-spoken executives in the business. The team is great. Even went to their NASDAQ party earlier in the year, which was a lot of fun. And thank you for the invite from the Hive team. Now, why did I put them in the C tier? I think it comes down to 2 specific points. One is that, yes, they got to 25 exahash, which was a Herculean effort by their team in order to do that. But that came at the cost of moving out of the North American market and favoring more developing countries in the global south. And 2, that also means that you're moving more into Bitcoin mining when the market is moving against that. There was a really nice tweet that we referenced just the other day from Matt Seigel talking about the relative market caps of 2 companies with the same hash rate under deployment, Cipher and Hive. They both have about 25 exahash. Cipher has a $6 billion plus market cap. Hive has less than $1 billion market cap. And I think that's what you're seeing for the market right now. Bitcoin mining is not going to be rewarded on the same basis as an AI factory or any sort of AI factory. And so you're going to have a relatively less or lower vibe on this ranking. Even though your team proved they can execute, you have great megawatts in differentiated jurisdiction.
I think I agree with this. I originally had them at B, but I think I'm going to downgrade to C, given what you said. There's a reason I had them at B. If you look at the Paraguay deal and the hash rate expansion that Hive has experienced this year, it is really incredible. They basically quintupled their hash rate, right? And that's no small feat, as any Bitcoin miner who's deployed ASICs at scale knows. But I guess the reason why I would bump them down to C, to your point about AI and HPC, people forget that Hive was one of the first companies advertising an HPC business line. They have data centers in Canada and in Sweden, and they say that they're building one in Paraguay. I don't think that that's actually online yet. Correct me if I'm wrong, listeners, if I'm woefully inaccurate with that statement. But the fact of the matter is, you pointed it out, Will, they focused on growing hash rate kind of at the expense of their AI and HPC line, which is still very small. And as I understand, they're operating clusters that they own. And operating a tiny neocloud business is not something that the market seems to think is going to pay off long term, as is indicated in their stock price.
Certainly great.
I mean, it's not bad, right? Like, it's great that they have it. But my point being, they had something of an early lead, albeit not a huge one, in the AI HPC space. And we haven't really seen their Buzz HPC line progress the way that their peers have. So I think C is fair.
They were one of the larger ETH miners, right? So yes. It's kind of ironic that they whiffed the big GPU transition to AI.
In their defense, I wouldn't say whiff. Like, I think you have.
Yeah,
yeah. It's all about capital, right? Like, and I think that's something that investors can forget about. What did Hive have in terms of access to capital in order to get those big deployments? It just doesn't seem like they had that for whatever reason. Maybe it's just because like they're cross-listed on Toronto Stock Exchange, right? But I think they're also on NASDAQ and have been for a while. I just don't think they had the cash to be able to pull off a transition. So even though they had some sites in Scandinavia, They now have the Buzz HPC line in Toronto, which I believe has a deal with the Canadian government. It's still just like not enough capital to pull off like what an IREN has done. And you have to be basically like levered to the tits to be able to do that.
I think if you look at the GPUs they would have been running, those would be like Model Ts compared to the Teslas that are running today. And also, as I understand, some of those ETH miners wouldn't have even been viable for HPC or other computing loads, because when you modify them to mine ETH, some of them, as I understand, were like basically bricked from doing anything else. And we saw this with HUD 8 too. When they retired ETH mining, they put out a bunch of press releases that they were going to repurpose those GPUs, and nothing ever came of it. So
I mean, I'll actually say that there was a very, very brief window post merge and early on in the ETH in the AI run where like some of the legacy ETH miners would have like been fine. It's just that you do basically bootstrap shoestring budget to plug these rigs in, and it really would have required an actual infrastructure overhaul. And so yeah, I'll also just comment though that of all as Aiden's one of the better interviewers and one of the more personable CEOs. However, of the hexagonal logos, of which there are 4, Hive is the least memorable. So yeah.
Personally, I like the honeybee for a lot of their stuff, so that gets to me. Okay, let's keep moving along here. American Bitcoin. Now, I'm going to do my preamble beforehand. American Bitcoin has been an interesting story. This year, they announced a launch and then did a merge of some sort with Griffin, formerly a Bitcoin miner that we kind of covered, kind of didn't, because it never got too big and they had some sketchy history. But they were able to take over Griffin Mining's spot on the NASDAQ and convert the company completely. They also did a pipe deal that we will talk about in a moment. And they also had a existing Bitmain agreement through their parent company, HUT 8, in order to purchase a bunch of different Bitmain units. Now, throughout all these transactions, there has been one big name, that is Eric Trump, who has been pushing American Bitcoin. Of course, HUT 8 and American Data Centers Inc. is how American Bitcoin was first birthed. And throughout this year, it has been, yes, a success story in the fact that they got it off the ground and they have one of the fastest listings on a stock exchange in history. Those are the facts. However, there were a lot of details that got rushed during this process. The first one I'll call out is the purchase of these Bitmain units. And at the time, they were noted for being perhaps some of the best, most efficient direct cooling chip Bitmain units out there. However, upon inspection of the individual units, they were really just different versions of S21s bolted together. This was not anything special or out of the ordinary, and it kind of amounted to a different press release that they could throw out there for investors who didn't really understand what they're talking about. The second thing, the pipe. Pipe deals exist for a reason, but they can be very destructive, as we have seen with our DAT friends this year. Yes, it's good to raise equity, it's good to raise capital, but if there are not proper disclosures and investors are not aware, you risk quite literally murdering your stock price. And that is what happened with American Bitcoin, where yes, they had some disclosures around an initial pipe, I guess, freeing or unlock for certain shareholders December 1st. But it wasn't enough for the market to actually be quite aware of what's going to occur. And the stock tumbled over 50% in one day. As of now, I think we have to put American Bitcoin into the C category. And that might even be a little bit nice. Some things on the positive side, they are adding more Bitcoin to the treasury. If you still believe in the Bitcoin treasury competition landscape going into 2026, which a lot of people don't believe anymore, but if you still, they have it on their roadmap, their adherence to it, they're doing the thing, that's great. Other things to note, they have a great relationship with HUD 8, which owns a large portion of their equity, and they get pretty good hosting deals on all of HUD 8's sites. So there's that. Last part, the Trump effect. We still have 3 more years of the Trump administration. And while I imagine right now it's crime season, it is crime season right now. You can just still keep, milking the gravy train for at least a little bit, and that'll work. So for those reasons, I put ABTC into the C category. I could see them next year moving up if they're able to unwind the damage from the pipe unlock.
Fake news.
Fake news. Failed podcaster, talking head William Foxley doesn't know about Bitcoin. He's saying C. Everyone I know says S. Everyone. No one disagrees.
I think this is generous, and I would agree. This is where I have them too. And you could almost slip down into D on this alone. They are a quasi Bitcoin treasury company at a time when that whole pitch seems dead in the water, and they don't own any infrastructure. And if there's anything worse than being a Bitcoin miner right now, if there's anything worse than being a Bitcoin miner right now that doesn't have an AI strategy, it's being a Bitcoin miner that's asset light. And I think if you look at Marathon's attempts to move away from that belatedly in the last few years is indicative of how, one of the biggest operators in the space is thinking that that's a foolish strategy. So when you look at the fact that they are going to be paying higher fees for their power and management because they're paying it to Hut 8, who's managing the sites, and you look at the fact that part of their pitch is that they're a Bitcoin treasury company at a time when the market doesn't have appetite for that. Not to mention the mixed investor signals. Marathon has sorry.
Look at that chart.
That's a BART if I ever saw one.
It is a BART, and it's the purest example of a BART I think we could probably find in some of the U.S. listed equities. But when you look at Marathon has the second largest Bitcoin treasury of any company, but they have not been rewarded in their stock price over the Bitcoin treasury summer the way other actual Bitcoin treasury companies were, because investors don't want that mixed messaging. They want to know you're focusing on this. Here are the KPIs we need to look at. If you're investing in ABTC because it's a Bitcoin treasury company, I just don't think that the beta that used to exist is there anymore. And in fact, when we look at the data, I ran this analysis earlier in the year, it's not there anymore. Bitcoin miners are no longer trading with a super high beta to Bitcoin like they did last cycle. So when you couple that with the fact that they don't actually own any infrastructure, to me, you could see them very easily going down to a D, but I think we'll give them a C just because of some of the other qualitative things you mentioned with the branding and everything.
I'll push back against a D. Yeah, vibes down pretty bad because investors are really confused. The company itself seems very confused as to what it is. They're just like Eric Trump as a front man. He has a very he has a very weird vibe. But I'll say, you see that video he posted of inside the data center, and he's like, "This is a Bitcoin mod." That got so much reach, taught so many normies about it. It Bitcoin pilled a lot of like Republicans, I think. And also talk about a company which really wants to own the America thing. I want to reciprocate those vibes because I like that strong logo. Now I'm not saying this because I wouldn't want to own the stock right now, but the vibes are not a D vibe. In fact, I might even say vibes only. I might put them in B.
Well, let me show you the chart again. You might change your mind.
I hadn't looked at the chart for a while, so
honestly, if we're going on vibes alone, the pipe is enough to keep them where they are. I mean, that was just spectacular. And just to highlight the whole problem with that, there was no disclosure of the unlock date in their SEC filings. The first place that people would look, Asher Ganut, Hut 8 CEO, said that he mentioned that there was an unlock coming.
But even the expert terminal online analysts didn't catch it.
We are CleanSpark, America's Bitcoin miner, a publicly traded company with the largest operating hash rate, powered entirely by self-operated infrastructure across 4 states. This is our proof of work, and we are setting the standard for what's next. Learn more about the intersection of energy and Bitcoin at cleanspark.com.
Let us move on to our next stock, BitFUFU. I think we'll move fast on this one. I'm just going to throw them in C. There's not really a rationale for being lower than that. They're expanding their megawatts under capacity. They have a relationship with Bitmain that's really solid. They have a very large cloud mining contract network that is outside the US, which I think gives them a lot of nice recurring revenue. However, they're completely focused on mining Bitcoin. Maybe they put a press release out about AI infrastructure. Doesn't really matter. I see them mainly as a spin-off arm or an arm's length entity to Bitmain, enabling them to get access to US capital markets. But it can't really be more than that, especially given that a lot of their revenue comes from cloud mining, which more or less is not allowed in the US under securities regulations. So there's definitely an upper limit on how far this company can climb up the Vibe rankings, because it mainly has to travel based on Bitcoin price. Like that's what's going to give you strength. So yeah, exahash, megawatts under capacity, HODL, those metrics might go up, but you are completely bound to Bitcoin price. And even past that, you are discounted versus your peers because you're not truly a US or North America first company. So that's my take. I think C is probably spot on, maybe a tad generous, but D doesn't feel right. B certainly doesn't feel right.
You're going to give the Bitcoin miner with 5 exahashes that it owns and 25 that it doesn't, or rather contract it out to other people for hosting and cloud. You're going to give them a C. I think this is a D. Sorry, Stephen A. Smith impersonation there for those who
Stephen A.
listeners.
He just popped on a mining show.
Quick notes here. The reason why I would give them a D is because when we look at their managed hash rate, yes, they do have large cloud contracts. Those cloud contracts aren't netting very much right now because hash price is so low. So the ability to actually recoup the cost on operating those machines, albeit they are in low cost areas like Ethiopia and Paraguay, your margins are still very compressed. Hosting margins also compressed by the same logic. And they only 5 exahashes of their mining is self-mining. I'm not really sure if they're going to rebalance that, if they can't get contracts. The one vote in favor of them, to your point, is that they are basically an extension of Bitmain. That gives them a lot of power and sway. I don't think they're going to be going out of business anytime soon. But they also have they've really put themselves, I think, in a risky position with some other places that they're operating. For instance, Ethiopia, they got 215 megawatts there. Ethiopia just released a revised electricity tariff schedule. So for the next few years, they're going to start upping the electricity prices for data centers and Bitcoin miners because so many came to the country. It's got hydropower and not much of it is used because it's not super electrified. We've also got operations in Paraguay and in Brazil as well. You know, Paraguay and Brazil may be a little bit better than the other alternatives in South America, but still, kind of to your point, Will, most U.S. investors can't price the risk of those jurisdictions, so they're not going to favor this stock. So, given all of that, I think a D is maybe too harsh, but they're pretty close to it.
I got a BitFUFU business card. Very, very good business card. Very, very strong vibes there. And then of the 3 Animalia logos, it's solidly in the middle. Lion's a safe bet. But
logo analysis is key. Stock analysis more so. It's been down only if you're looking at the chart. So this isn't the 1 year, and it's kind of reached a bottom in May and been chopping since then. And then when the November sell-off hit, it's been going down again. So we went from 560 to 260. Not a great look. Let's keep moving along. We have so many more companies to cover. So I'm going to go back to my main tab here. And this is the one that I think might be the most contentious online, perhaps. We'll see if it's contentious here. And that's Mara, formerly known as Marathon Digital Holdings. We had some great interviews with Fred Thiel, who came on the show graciously in November. Colin and I also did a recap of Mara based on what we thought about them at the time and how we thought, things weren't going super, super well for them. I'm going to have to throw them in the B category, which maybe is just dodging the conversation about where they're really at. Maybe someone would say, throw them in the A tier. They have a great pipeline. They have a lot of capital. They have a lot of Bitcoin. Some people say throw them in the C tier because they actually don't have any deals done with AI or inferencing, and their narrative keeps shifting. And I think both those points could be fair. I would lean more towards the downside at this point because the market needs to see something happening besides executives continuing to sell shares. We need to see more than just press releases and partnerships that are not necessarily closed yet for the market to bring back up the vibes. Now, in terms of some of the other notes about them, I think that they do have some potentially interesting partnerships and offerings on the table as the next 5 years unravel. So they have this opportunity to work with a French company, Xion, to develop inferencing. It's for sovereign cloud, potentially very powerful. They also have a new deal with MPLX to work on energy development, and that's in the great state of Texas. That could be potentially very important. But for now, if I'm looking at their megawatts from their capacity, at their mining, their operational efficiency, all these things, it doesn't give me enough of a oomph to put into the A. I can't quite discount it enough to be in C. The only thing that I'd say probably would push me more towards being in C is the stock performance year to date, which has been pretty tough. It's one of the few Bitcoin miners that will so far end the year pretty thoroughly in the red versus other companies. And you can just see it really, really has dumped since October. Colin, any thoughts?
Yeah, I put Marathon in C. And the reason I did is for some of the things that you mentioned. I think B is a very diplomatic choice, and I salute you, sir. But if I'm looking at Mara, let's start with just the Bitcoin mining. They have one of the highest hash costs and one of the highest, executive comps in the industry, stock-based and cash-based. If you look at the fact that they haven't really made many inroads at all with AI and HPC, they have this stake in Xion where now they're a majority owner. That's like the AI HPC subsidiary of France's energy national energy operator. It's unclear what exactly the point of that partnership is to investors at this point. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's how it seems to me. Is it's not totally clear strategically what this is trying to do. And if you also look at the market that they're trying to break into, partnering with sovereigns is probably smart long-term for certain operators, but a lot of the investment, a lot of the excitement on the AI and HPC stuff is here in North America. It's here in the US. As their peers are signing deals with hyperscalers and building infrastructure in the US, they're taking a stake in an AI company that's attached to a sovereign in the Eurozone where, quite frankly, it's just not as business friendly. So I think that you could potentially bump them up to B given some of their strategies with like the UAE and trying to make something of these sovereign partnerships that they're developing, like with Xion. But overall, I don't think that they've shown that, frankly, they haven't shown that they can mine Bitcoin at an attractive cost. So if we're even thinking about them trying to do AI and HPC, there's a question of will they be able to execute there too. So I would put them in C. So I can take the heat for that. You can rest easy on this one.
I'll get some heat for being in B as well.
I'll put them in C as well because on social media they've just been getting absolutely eviscerated by shareholders, by retail investors, and they're also enemy number one in the filter debate because they have the Slipstream product. Now, I like to see all the fun little side projects that Marathon has put their power behind, like the Enduro platform, the side chains. They're actually kind of bankrolling some of the BIP360 and Quantum like solution discourse, and I'm a huge fan of Slipstream. But yeah, vibes though have been down, so I'd throw them in C.
We need to talk about 2PIC as well. I mean, they spent a lot of money and a lot of marketing.
Dang,
I
forgot about 2PIC. You're right.
Yeah, they spent many a press release, many a call, and a lot of money talking about this 2PIC cooling solution that, as far as we can tell, is kind of has had the kibosh thrown on it, right? And they fired their CTO recently, who was in charge of that. And so you've had these R&D, projects that didn't really seem to get anywhere, that were originally branded as maybe being a good boost for the business. So
I would keep my placement because of the capital holdings. I think that
Yeah, they're the third largest Bitcoin holder.
They're a large Bitcoin holder, and that is the gift that keeps on giving despite operational weaknesses. So we'll see. The vibes could be better, but I'm okay with a B for now. Let's keep moving along. Next one, Hut. This one's tough. The last week has certainly changed the outlook for this company. I think I would have put them in a B tier before this week. And that company is Hut 8, which I think I'm going to put in a solid A tier. Now, they're a company that I think you could even make a good argument for an S tier, but because of the relationship with American Bitcoin and also the facts of a lot of other sites that I need to see more information about, I think A is a really strong placement for them. And again, A is a great ranking. Fantastic ranking. Not S tier, but a fantastic ranking. The biggest piece of news hit was that their Louisiana campus that's developing right next to the Meta Facebook campus found a home with Anthropic coming in and FluidStack as well, helping to build out that campus. So I think them getting really solid unit economics, even better economics than we've seen with some of the other deals out there, only boosts the credibility of what Hut 8 is building, the direction they took by separating their Bitcoin mining fleet and moving that to American Bitcoin, keeping their Bitcoin hodl and focusing on AI HPC development and power pipeline. So for those reasons, I have to give Hut an A. If I was to detract from them, I think it would just be better to see more consistency and clarity around what Hut 8 is doing with the AI HPC, and then the fact that the executives are split between repping both American Bitcoin and Hut 8. Yes, sure, Elon Musk can do that. A lot of executives work for two companies or rep multiple companies. But if I'm looking at some of the other ones out here, they're all in on one stock, pushing for it. And I think that would be like the only major concern. I think this Hut 8 deal with Anthropic was huge. And I think that really boosted them from that B category to the A and arguably even the S. But I'm going to do A. Colin?
I almost put them in S per my prior criteria for if you're going to get that rating, you really need to have something to differentiate. The reason why I almost did that for Hut 8 is the $7 billion deal that it signed with FluidStack. Google is backstopping all of that revenue. Before, we've seen Google pledge backstops for Terawulf and Cipher's build-outs with FluidStack, but they didn't commit to the full revenue over the lease. I mean, I would just love to know how they negotiated that, because that is an incredible thing to pledge. And what this allows Hut 8 to do, they can go out to lenders and now say the entire revenue for this lease is guaranteed. So you're de-risked from us defaulting on this. And when you couple that with the fact that the contract has options for extension up to, like, I think 17.7 billion over the contracted term with an additional 2 gigawatts of development, that's massive. Now, that's on paper as kind of per our conversation earlier about Cipher and Fred Thiel saying we're going to need to see some sites actually get set up and powered on. That's going to be really difficult to accomplish. It's going to take a long time. But this was an absolute watershed moment for Hut 8 with this FluidStack deal. So it almost was enough for me to put them in S. But given, what I said earlier about Cipher, I had them in A here because clearly they have proven themselves as one of the premier Bitcoin miners expanding into AI.
Yeah. A tier, could be S tier. Things keep going really well. I will say their Canada site was an iconic site. They did a lot of like good videos of that, showed the people what Bitcoin miner looked like. And then I actually think it's actually wise they spun out ABTC to a different entity. That was a very smart play by them. And yeah, I will also say Colin called it. If you read Colin's writing and reporting about 2 months ago, he put Hut 8 as like one of the ones which is yet to sign one of these big deals, which has not yet been priced in. So alpha is with Blockspace.
For the Google deal, remind me, Colin, did they do an equity deal as part of that? Terawulf and Cipher gave equity.
I don't think so.
I don't believe it. And the unit economics get better, and that's a whole overarching thesis, right, for these AI factories, which will separate them from the Bitcoin miners even more so, because the economics of these deals are not only massive, but they're getting better every deal we see. And Google's good for its money. We know that. They have a AAA plus rating from Moody's or whatever. So we will keep marching along. I don't think we need to disagree on that one too much. Doesn't seem like there is much room for disagreement. Let's keep going. Cango, tough one. I think this is going to be my first D category for Cango. Now, maybe I should put BitFUFU in there if I'm going to be consistent. But I think there's a lot of headwinds for Cango. And the biggest one is they destroyed investor trust earlier this year when they sold their former owners of the automotive company that was Cango before Bitmain essentially purchased them, sold a lot of founder shares, and the stock price cratered. I think that really hurt a lot of trust in the stock, and it's going to be hard for that to come back. Additionally, they're sort of in the wrong market at the moment. You know, they have like a lot of these US sites and a few global sites for Bitcoin mining that, yes, they've indicated they want to use for AI, and they put out an investor CEO letter to that fact that they want to get into AI. But we'll need to see something actually happen besides an investor letter. A letter is great, but right now they are a Bitcoin mining company. That's essentially what they're built for. They do have the relationship with Bitmain, which is great, but in an era of hash price compression, in an era of less interest in Bitcoin mining on public markets, in an era when we know how to price Bitcoin miners on public markets as well compared to prior years, you are basically trading again at a discount or relative to Bitcoin, and then a further discount because of your connections to Bitmain and East Asia in general versus megawatts here in North America. You might have megawatts in North America, but you are not viewed as a North American company. And so for that reason, I'm giving them our first D ranking.
I think that's spot on. They have 50 exahashes. They haven't grown their fleet since last year. All of that's hosted at Bitmain facilities. You have the same problem that I mentioned with ABTC, to where your margins are hyper compressed because of that at this point. They're kind of talking about AI, but there's nothing real on the table yet. And, you know, the fact that the stock, they just like came out of nowhere at the end of last year, as we reported, and then they came out of nowhere with like one of the largest fleets in the industry, tied with Marathon, and they haven't really done anything this year. So I think D is very fair.
Yeah, don't really know much about Cango. We don't know a lot of people over there, and it's like,
yep, that's a good point. They don't talk too much to Western media.
They don't talk very much.
I mean, really look at your stock.
Yeah. I mean, Marathon's out there writing, you know, lead sponsorship checks. So is, you know, the other majors, but Cango, with as much hash rate, very little like ground game.
They recently did a conversion on the New York Stock Exchange where they're listed, and are bringing some things into compliance with, you know, normal brokerage rules here. So that can help, and you can see that kind of pop in December when they decide to do that. But looking at the stock chart year to date, it's pretty brutal. They started the year, you know, around 260, and it's down to $1. If we zoom out even further, let's go on the 5-year, even though they're not in existence at 5-year, you can see that December 2024 where they popped up to, I believe it was higher at the time. So I wonder.
Well, because this is the after the stock split.
Yeah, this is after the split, the inverse where you bring together. Anyways,
it was like 8.
Yeah,
in December.
It was much higher, and you've been holding the stock. You've been enduring some pain. I've heard it referenced as clink among some people, not Cango or Kang. So we will keep moving along. First D ranking. We got 6 more. We're going to try to speed it up a little bit more, and I think this next one's going to be kind of fun. Bitfarms. I think last time I put them in the B ranking, and to be frank, not too much has changed versus some of the relative peers. A lot of people do like them, and I'm really debating between an A and a B ranking at the moment. I could really see it going either way, and at the moment, I'm just going to have to go with what I put down on my sheet beforehand, because I'm feeling a little hesitant right now. I'm going to give them a B ranking again, and I think the rationale for this is they have successfully converted a lot of their megawatts to North America, which is the right strategy. They have the capital from a few agreements in order to build out the site. They also have an agreement with T5 data centers to build out their site in Pennsylvania. So all the things are in line. The last thing I'll also know is like the capital structure is even better because they were able to kind of get RIOT off their back and then launch a buyback for their stock. All those things are lined up, and I think it's lined up for a very good 2026. But at the end of 2025, we haven't seen a deal announcement. We haven't seen any expansion growth announcements yet. So if I was to pick a stock going to next year that I'm probably the most bullish on, it might be Bitfarms out of the ones we're ranking, just because like a lot of the pieces are there. But as of the Vibe ranking today, I think a B category is pretty fair given they don't have a deal signed with a hyperscaler. They're still operating most of their cash flow from Bitcoin, and they still have a lot of expensive builds to complete before they get to a place where they're able to sign a nice deal.
I would agree with this, and just a few notes and moving quickly here. One of the reasons why I think they deserve a B and not lower, despite the fact that they haven't announced any sort of AI deal. They own 2 coal-fired power plants in Pennsylvania, the Scrubgrass and the Panther Creek power plant that they acquired from Stronghold. And that's just an incredible value add if you're trying to go into the AI and HPC industry. Like, they own the power, not just the site and not just the infrastructure. And this also gives them optionality with it. If they want to mine, if they want to do AI and HPC, if they want to find a way to get that power to market, they can do all of these things. I think that makes them really exciting. And the fact that they haven't struck a deal yet with a hyperscaler or an AI provider, they're in a really good market in Pennsylvania, PJM, having some problems, but overall, like, generally one of the better markets to operate in. And when you think about what I said earlier in the year regarding HUD 8, per Charlie's comment, the HUD 8's price was kind of moving in such a way where it seemed like insiders knew that a deal was coming. It wouldn't be surprising to me if we maybe see something with Bitfarms as they gear up to sign a tenant or sign a deal with a hyperscaler. I would be surprised if they didn't ink something next year. And to your point, I could easily see us putting them in an A, maybe in a quarter or two, if they get one of those deals signed, because they've got really interesting sites, really good and focused team. I'm a big fan of a lot of the team members at Bitfarms, including my friend Alex Brammer. Shout out to Brammer. And obviously Ben Gagnon leading them well is too. So I think they could easily be an A next year. Right now, B is very fair.
I mean,
Totally with you, Colin. Alex, Ben, also used the old logo. Will they actually updated the logo, which has better vibes?
Oh,
so the
nice.
new logo, slightly better vibes. Yeah, I expect the next time we rank, they'll move up to A. So we'll see.
Next one, Core Scientific. I'm gonna throw them into the B. I think this is fair. I don't think there's too many things to talk about with them. Like they didn't do the deal with CoreWeave. Shareholders voted no. We do have the delay announcement with CoreWeave at the Denton facility due to some rains that happened in Texas over the summer. That makes sense. It happens. I don't know exactly what the expansion options quite look like. They do have more megawatts that they can bring into future deals, and that's why CoreWeave was interested. And they also have these deals going forward with the cash flows coming in. So like they're very secure in that way. I don't think there's too many surprises here. Perhaps it's unfair to put them in the B category with Bitfarms that doesn't have a deal signed, Mara that doesn't have a deal signed and has like the low operational efficiency, Canaan, which isn't even in this. I think just from a pure vibes perspective, the vibes just haven't been that interesting lately. They've just kind of been there. They're a service provider for CoreWeave. CoreWeave has not been doing particularly well, so there's a little bit of a knock-on effect there. And we have yet to see any sort of forward guidance on what is going to get shareholders excited for Core Scientific. The pieces are there even more so than a lot of the other companies that we've talked about so far. Like they already have a major deal. They have more expansion options available. But when I'm thinking about Core Scientific, there's not something that I'm like, okay, your stock price is certain to go up, 2x, 1.5x, etc. this coming year. It seems very conditional on the unit economics of CoreWeave and if they're able to find more tenants and diversify their current project.
I would agree with this. This is where I have them, and I know you wanted more disagreement, so maybe I can bring Stephen A. Smith back on. But I think that this is fair when you consider the fact that, a year ago, if we were doing these rankings, they would have been S because of their deal with CoreWeave, right? Because they were the first, they pioneered this AI expansion model for a lot of the Bitcoin miners. and they had the first notable contract, right? But since we've seen IREN, HUD-8, Cipher, and Terawulf kind of outshine them with these deals with major hyperscalers and with the backing of a titan like Google, right? So if you look at that deal, CoreWeave deal is not nearly as exciting as some of those others in terms of the actual contracted megawatts and in terms of the revenue that's going to bring in. It's still good, but to your point, investors are going to be wondering, well, okay, all your peers are signing these deals with Amazon, FluidStack, Anthropic, Google, etc. Are we going to get something like that? And to pull up their investor update after the shareholder vote failed, you can see that they have earmarked the Grand Forks, North Dakota site, which is 70 megawatts of billable power currently, as maybe a future co-location site. They have Pecos, Texas, earmarked for a future AI HPC co-location site. Same with their Calvert City, 100 megawatts. They have that earmarked. And they have, some earmarked for Auburn, Alabama. And so they have options on the table. It's just a question of will they actually be able to deliver on those options. And I think that's kind of the biggest question going into this, next year. And I think they would, we wouldn't be talking about them if the CoreWeave deal went through necessarily. But like if that CoreWeave deal did go through, I would have put them in here as an honorable mention for being lower in the sense that it's good for shareholders that failed. I think like most shareholders and most analysts are like, this deal is completely undervaluing Core Scientific for what we know now with what's going on with all their peers. So I think that, the future is still bright for Core Scientific, but investors are going to need to see another deal to de-risk away from CoreWeave.
They wouldn't be in the Vibe rankings if the deal went through. They'd be part.
No, I know. I know. I'm just saying the ghost of Core Scientific in the Vibe rankings,
the ghost of Adam
lower
Sullivan,
because that deal was not to the benefit of most shareholders, is my point.
I will say Adam has one of the best vibes of public CEOs out there. Fun hang. So there's that. Looking at the stock price, you can see that build up into November or October, I should say. Because I think the deal got called off like the end of October, spooky Halloween season. And then the stock price kind of cratered. It's been kind of working its way back up, the little engine that could here. We need to see more, like you're saying, Colin. I think that's a lot of what shareholders have been kind of expressing. It's like, yes, this deal didn't go through. Management was focused on this deal. What's going to happen now? What's happening in 2026? What are we going to get excited about? And I think diversification of tenants is probably the biggest thing for a lot of these companies. You don't just want to be in the CoreWeave vertex or vortex. You got to be with multiple companies. So any thoughts, Charlie, before we bounce on over to the next one?
No, this one's hard for me to rank just because like they've been all over the place for the past few years.
Yeah, it's tough because we put a few companies that don't have AI deals or are not even pursuing AI in the B ranking, but that's the beauty of the Vibe ranking. We can kind of make it up as we go along. Bitdeer, this is a tough one. They were my S tier. I think you got to throw them in the C.
Yeah, they were S tier before, but man.
Yeah. This is called tumbling down the block, tumbling down the stairs. They were my S tier for a few reasons back in May. If you go and watch that, they have the vertical integration that with Bitcoin mining that can compete with Bitmain. Those numbers similar to Canaan, but Canaan's much smaller. But if you can compete with Bitmain on a unit economics perspective and both self-mine and sell to others, you are in a dominant position. They also had some breakout technology that has since then sort of been the question of both a legal dispute for the company and investor ire over if the technical breakthrough was real. We're still waiting on news from that. There are some other things. They had to fire a facility that will definitely put them behind schedule at that Ohio facility just due to the nature of having a building catch on fire. Might slow you down a little bit. I think the last thing is just some of the financial news was like not well placed. They had like a series of bad news updates, bad earnings, and then they did like a convert at a poor time. And so there's just some like misses here, I think, when it comes to executing on the financial side. And that's certainly hurt shareholders and even burned some longtime fans of them. I can pull up the stock price here in a second, but I think when it comes to executives, people want to see the CEO on the earnings calls. And we haven't seen Jihan come on earnings calls. He's gone to some of the other things. He went to a Bloomberg event. I think he went to Cantor Fitzgerald in Miami, but we haven't seen him on the recent earnings call. And you need to see that CEO at the front. And so I think there's still like a little bit of an investor gap between East Asia and the US and how the norms are here.
Yeah, I think this is right. I was debating whether or not to. Oh, we bumped him down to C.
Yeah, I put them in B. I have them in B. Also, I mean, I
had them in B,
but I have them in B.
Well, let's look at the stock price.
I have them in B as well.
Well, yeah, but if the stock rankings, this is Vibe rankings.
Yeah, I would agree with Charlie there. I mean, part of this is like perspective, right? It's like looking at how they're positioned going into 2026. I was on the cusp of C or B, so I'm going to kind of just defer and say I have them as B, but I think C is also fair. And you cited the reasons. Going back to the Seal chip thing, so for their Seal 04 chip, for their upcoming Seal miner A4, they had originally slated Q2 2025 for the chip. This chip was expected to deliver 5 joules per terahash at the chip level, roughly 7 to 8 joule per terahash with the entire ASIC constructed. They continue to push back that timeline. Now they're saying that they are going to be producing some this quarter with mass production next quarter, but the actual efficiency of that chip is not what they had originally advertised. And now they're saying that there's going to be 2 versions of the Seal 04, the Seal 041 and the Seal 042. And so that it's just really confusing, I think, to a lot of investors. It looks like, I'm not going to say that they lied about the efficiency. I think they legitimately thought they could hit that. And then something happened in the design and the tape out to where they didn't end up getting the results that they were hoping for. But when you couple that with the fact that they don't really seem to have a clear AI or HPC angle for diversifying their revenue, that to me could give them the C. The thing that gives them the B in my mind is the Bhutan contract is still crazy. They get near free power from Bhutan that's just gushing with hydro and are partnered with the sovereigns there. And that's just a really kind of incredible contract. They still have a massive pipeline for gigawatt expansion. And the other thing too, we covered this on the block space this week, they are leasing out a warehouse space in just outside of Reno, Nevada for ASIC manufacturing in the US. Whether this moves the needle on their business is I think up for debate. We don't know how many ASICs they're going to be able to push out from that factory month by month, but it does show me that they are reacting, to the tariffs in such a way where they are going to be able to better service the market in the US. Bitmain has facilities here. MicroBT has facilities here. I'm not sure of the relative size compared to those, but the fact of the matter is they're moving in the right direction for that. I think for me to be super confident about the B, though, I'd need to see more in terms of AI and HPC stuff, and all of the hiccups that you mentioned between the Fire and the Seal chip definitely could make the argument for a C merit here for them.
I want to put them in B. I'll argue for B because I think Bitdeer is very well positioned for the international and the sovereign deals, probably better than a lot of their other counterparties. And then I think one of the reasons the stock price, investors have been a little antsy with the stock price because they're, a Chinese company. It's difficult.
Singaporean.
Singapore, but I mean,
they will correct.
I'm going to start calling all American companies registered in the Cayman Islands as Cayman companies.
Yeah. I mean, logic. Look, So I just think it's jurisdictional risk there. Maybe with this administration. So. We'll see. I think there be also of the animal logos. Bitdeer. They have a deer. Looks cool. Looks very powerful.
They're one of my favorite logos. I think.
Yeah, interesting. Really it's one of my least favorite, but
it's not very memorable. But it's one that it grows on
you. Okay, let's keep going. Look, we got the nice placement of the BitFUFU lions chasing the deer there. We got 3 more. IREN, RIOT, Terawulf, and we will close out. Again, we're not doing CleanSpark or Galaxy due to disclosure reasons. IREN, I'm going to get hate for this one, but I'm throwing him in A. I thought about S tier, but I think that a lot of it's priced in. I think a lot of the deal for Horizon 1 and 2, Sweetwater 1 and 2, and all that kind of got priced in over the course of the year. And yes, there's probably a lot more to come because of that Microsoft deal. I think there's a lot more to come. But I think if you're looking for, personally, my vibe is that the risk ranking of purchasing GPUs in a very, very hot market and then doing these larger deals it carries some risk. Now, some things on their side, they got a 20% prepayment. It's with Microsoft. They have awesome energy strategies in Texas, etc. But you also just have to think about where they're building and think about who has bought into this over the course of the last year. It's been a lot of retail momentum. Kramer was talking about them quite a lot. They have a huge army on Twitter that will definitely take issue with this at some point. And they've done tremendously well. And, it's been one of the stocks that I whiffed on as well. I remember IREN hitting the lowest mark during the last bear market and didn't purchase it during the entire run-up, have never held IREN as of now. But I think this A ranking is fair in the sense that there is a certain risk profile. They are on the more risky side of things with their strategy. And so for me, that doesn't put them into the S tier because I think that risk needs to knock them down a little bit. However, the A tier is very clear. The Microsoft contract, the capital basis, the investor relations aspect, which they are very, very good at. All these things put them into the A. And I think that we'll see more expansion plans, more announcements in 2026. As of now, with their current megawatts under capacity, I think that an A tier is sufficient.
Yeah, I can't disagree with this per my prior criteria. I think you're right. The biggest questions for IREN is, as all, for me at least, as I'm seeing it, all your peers are focusing on infrastructure play, and they're focusing on infrastructure and GPU operations. And I wonder if that's too much to chew off. Maybe not. They could have the best team to do both. And I know that they probably feel that way. And I know they have done some really good hiring in this on the side of things. So I'm not bearish on it entirely, but I do think it's a worthwhile question because operating a data center and then operating a GPU cluster, those are two different things. And I know Microsoft's going to be a huge partner and help here with it, but IREN is taking a different path than everyone else. They are not doing co-locating deals. They are actually running the GPUs themselves. And to your point, you're exposed to GPU price risk. So I think that's enough to merit them not being in the S tier. I think A is fair.
Yeah, A's fine. It's great. They're like a huge riser, big vibes on social media. I can't understand their logo. Never really logo is very weird feng shui to me. I don't get it.
It's going the wrong way too. It's down to the right, mostly up and to the right.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, remember when they sponsored, the What Bitcoin Did podcast with Peter, and people were like really angry about that. And then if those poor Bitcoiners just bought IREN, they'd be outperforming Bitcoin by 10x.
Yeah, it was weird for them to get mad about that. I think that was a great sponsorship by them, and they helped Peter make some amazing films. So weird.
They really did.
I think I don't need to be defending an A because an A truly is the top. The S tier is more of just like a speculative in a sense.
Stand out. Yeah, A's like top tier. Yeah,
A so they're top tier. So I got to stop contextualizing qualifying like a weak man. Yeah. RIOT, gonna throw them in B. Probably don't need to add too much to this. Got one of the largest data campuses. It's also in a primo location in Texas. It's not too far away from a lot of the major metros. A lot of these hyperscalers want a lot of energy at one location. They don't want spread out campuses. RIOT has the Bitcoin mining side to continue to build things out. I think RIOT, they're taking their time with who they're gonna pick, and they have picked up a few people like Jamie Leverton, formerly of Hut 8, and now of Reserve One, to advise on these deals. And I think that just sort of like shows you like they're moving the right way. They're taking their time. That being said, they're kind of in the Bitfarms stage where it's like they don't have a deal yet. They have a good capital basis, good brand penetration out there. People typically know RIOT and Marathon if they know Bitcoin mining. So I think like that speaks to it. The JP Morgan note recently, like they talked about 57 or so stocks this year that they think this coming year that are going to do well. And RIOT was their pick for this coming year, that they think there's going to be a 45% growth on the stock, just looking at how many megawatts they can deploy for AI HPC versus Bitcoin mining. And that's just the math on a multiple basis. So I think for all those reasons, B makes a lot of sense. Until we see something with them, actually, then we can't put them in A. But they're a solid B pick.
One of the most iconic sites, the Rockdale site. I wish someone were there making all the cool drone videos every week.
I mean, I think this is very fair. The fact of the matter is they've got massive facilities. They've got a gigawatt in Rockdale. They've got 400 megawatts active in Corsicana. That can be expanded to a gigawatt. They've also got some capacity in Kentucky, but we haven't seen any deals yet. And, you know, there's a question as to why that is. I'm not going to speculate. So the Rockdale facility is close-ish to Austin, so it could be good real estate for an AI and HPC build, but we haven't seen any announcements yet. I think kind of similar to some of the other miners like Bitfarms that we've covered. We get an announcement like that, get a good deal, they could easily be A in one of our next 5 rankings.
Okay, we only have one left, and that is Terawulf, which I'm going to put in my S tier at the top. I think, again, you could take shot at this one for overhyping this AI factory build, but I like how they have the capital basis, they have the relationship with Google, they have numerous sites for expansion, they have diversified geographies between New York and Texas. They also have a really good team on the ground with tons of experience from the energy sector that moved into Bitcoin mining, and now they're doing the PowerShell model. Lastly, I like the PowerShell model where you're not necessarily purchasing GPUs and building your own neocloud like IREN. I think that de-risks you a little bit, just like Cipher. And so for me, the S tier, the pinnacle, Cipher mining, and Terawulf, because they are de-risked, yet they get the high multiple as an AI factory while still using Bitcoin mining in order to grow revenues.
You are grading on a different rubric for companies taking the same class. Okay? We're talking about the same game, different rules. So yeah, I'm going to push back. You know, I don't think any of these companies deserve S tier until they can prove that they can get these sites online and operate them, or if they strike another crazy deal that clearly makes them by far and away the best. I see materially little difference between what we're seeing from outside of how they're managing capital and obviously the contractual terms. But if we look at HUD 8, IREN, Cipher, and Terawulf, I have a hard time judging any of them as being above any of the rest, given the information we have right now. They're all crushing it, but like for me, S tier is like God mode. Like you can't be touched, you know. To go back to the rankings as I understood them as a Super Smash Brothers Melee player, like Fox as a character is S tier because he can do things that none of the other characters in the cast can do. Falco and Marth are still good. Falco's still good, but they're not S tier because Fox beats them in every matchup. I'm sure there's new meta and there's going to be maybe a Melee professional player who's excoriating me in the replies. That'd be a fun crossover. Yeah. But I just don't see anything fundamentally separating any of these 4 from the rest. So
I think Will's too biased on stocks. I'm ranking these by vibes. Terawulf, fantastic. Standout of the category, but it's an A tier. It's not an S tier.
It has a wolf, bro.
Yeah. Remember, we have to compare animals to animals. And wolf's pretty good. It's an A tier animal. I don't think any of these are S tier animals.
A lion?
A lion could be S tier animal, but it's in context of the greater branding and everything. If Terra Lion had a lion, then maybe it could be it. I'm making stuff up. Terawulf, fantastic. I'd love to see these deals play out and accelerate.
I am very bullish on Terawulf. I think that
you can be bullish and they can be an A.
No, I think right now, the current vibe ranking, the only chink in my armor is like you could say IREN or HUT should also be in the S tier based on how I'm doing things. But again, with HUT, the American Bitcoin relationship worries me slightly. And with IREN,
HUT has all of their revenue backstopped by Google on the flu. I mean, that is crazy. If
it is crazy.
Any company that
well, why didn't you put them as S tier?
What's up?
Why didn't you put HUD 8?
Because going back to what I said, I think that like they were on the cusp, but the reason is because they still just have that one contract.
You're not brave enough to put someone in S tier. That's what
I'm not, because I don't think anyone has deserved S tier yet. I mean, seriously, I think that S tier truly is like pristine. You only should have one in S tier, probably.
Fermi is S tier. No deal signed.
At least we got a little bit of disagreement. I want to just before we close, I want to just throw mine up really quickly here, Will.
But I like my rankings. I like your rankings too.
I think it's good to show the level of disagreement, because I do agree. Like, I am bullish out of Terawulf, Cipher, HUD 8, and IREN. I'm really bullish all of them. From the conversations I've had with the Terawulf team and Cipher team, I've really liked the conversations that I've had and come away with, a sense of optimism about their ability to execute. So I agree with that. Yeah. But here are my final rankings. I did amend Hive. I don't think I can be intellectually honest and give them a B if I'm giving Marathon a C here, So the reason I gave them a B in the first place is because of the crazy exahash expansion. But anyway, no S's in Colin's vibe ranking class. I am a strict grader, and some people probably
school's in session. This is a good ranking. Disagree with you on a few points, but we'll see. The fun thing for us is we know people at all these companies, including people who might be mad about the rankings, but the vibes are the vibes, and that's just how the project works. So we will close out there. Colin, Charlie, thank you so much for joining us on this expedition into the vibe rankings of various Bitcoin miners. If you want to
record long one,
huh?
So this is a record long episode for the year.
Very long, hour 25. Yeah, we'll clip this up though. If you want to participate, grab the link in the show notes and post your own vibe ranking on Twitter. Tag @Blockspace or one of us fellas at As I Lay Hodling, at WS Foxley, at CB Spears, and we will engage with your vibe ranking. Otherwise, have a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and we will see you guys next week.